Good afternoon and welcome to the podcast with Tax Practice Pro and our 1CE today for a tax rep update. My name is John Sheeley. I'm the founder of Tax Practice Pro. How are you? I'm on with Amanda, Kendall, and Marc Dombrowski, who are both waving because they're very sociable people. Uh, a quick bit of housekeeping. If you're on for the CE and we've collected your PTIN or your CTEC number, you do need to be on for at least 50 minutes to be awarded the CE. I do need you to answer 2 of the 3 polling questions. And it'll take us, because of the number of folks that are on here, it might take us a couple of weeks to get you your CE certificate and upload to the IRS. I'm hoping 10 days. The CE the certificate will come to you from Simple Cert. You'll get an email and you'll be able to download your certificate. And of course, we'll upload it to the IRS. If you're on for 50 minutes, you'll get 1 IRS CE, 1 NASBA CPE. Our speakers today are Amanda Kendall, our friend in Denver. Amanda's an enrolled agent. She's the owner of True Resolve Tax Professionals. She works with clients representing them in front of the IRS. She's also known to do a tax return or 2. She's been an enrolled agent for 8.5 years. I met her at NTPI, and she's a quite a little mini Dombrowski, we used to say, with her knowledge. And like Marc, she talks
She's
to the
her
IRS
own Dombrowski by now.
Be
I'm
nice,
a better
Marc.
looking Dombrowski.
She talks to the IRS every day, and these are the type of folks that understand what's going on with the IRS as things change. Marc Dombrowski in Buffalo is an enrolled agent since 1996.
Oh wait, never mind. Go ahead.
No, 6, dude. Your number's like 100 away from mine, and my certificate says June of 96. So no offense. I just looked at it on the wall. Marc has spoken for about everybody at least twice. Most of us know him as a instructor in level 2 at the National Tax Practice Institute, which is coming up the end of this month. What's going on, folks? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Happy Friday. If the attendees are wondering whether this was going to be a 1 hour or 2 hour, you can thank me that it's only a 1 hour on a Friday afternoon, because I talked John and Amanda into it. Because 2 hours on a Friday when it's so nice on the East Coast, I don't know about the West Coast. You're just worrying about tremors, and down south you're worried about the hurricane. But maybe we should have entertained you for 2 hours. We'll definitely go over, John. I mean, we'll definitely.
When I told you we needed 100 minutes to award 2 CE, you said you couldn't count to 100. That was the problem.
I've been never ever good with numbers.
There we go. So I want to open up a recent problem I had is working with a non-filer. I know you guys have better clients than I do, but mine come in having not filed, and I needed to get IRS transcripts, which is a best practice. And of course, I called the IRS and they sent me back that mess of a redacted transcript. But they've stopped faxing, right? That everybody's experience now.
You can still get them occasionally. I think it depends on the rep. For the most part, they're moving away from it.
Yeah, the IRS announcement, and I'm just, there's been the changes. We as a practitioner community cried and cried and cried about the IRS not allowing faxing and redacting the transcripts. It's been a year and a half, well, at least a solid year of us complaining about it, and Congress or the IRS did react. They gave us a little bit of a break from January to now, but June 28th they stopped faxing. July 1st, we're effective July 1st. Yeah, will stop its third-party mailing service. But the moral of the story is, for those of us who are on e-services already, TDS, taxpayer, the TDS system, then we can get these transcripts still sent to us instead of via fax. We can get them into our secure repository there, and
secure object repository.
So secure object repository, and get them ourselves. So I was saying this before the broadcast started, that I'm not one of these, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, running around without a chicken without a head, because I'm okay with the redacted transcripts. They're the future. They're what we're going to have to get used to. And quite frankly, it's only going to get worse, in my opinion, because how could it get any worse? But because of identity theft and other things like that, the IRS is going to have to take additional steps to secure taxpayer data.
We, one interesting point there though is that what can we do though if we want a full transcript, Mark? They'll put the unredacted one into the.
We can call practitioner priority line and have them deposited into our SOR.
Right. But what do I need to know to do that?
A cheetah is the fastest land animal.
I'll answer this one.
Go
You
ahead,
have to know your login information, your username, because that's the one thing they're going to ask you for is your username, and that's how they match it up to your SOR to put it in there.
And we have a friend in Pennsylvania who, you've got a friend in Pennsylvania, Mark? We have a friend in Pennsylvania who will be nameless, who has a funny username, and she's embarrassed every time she has to tell an IRS agent that username. So some of this is going to come back to haunt us, I think, with that funny
it's
username.
Funny when you ask the clients for their email address and you hear them. Then there's
Wow. Okay, so it's been very nice. You can get the unredacted transcript put into your secure object repository. You need to know your username, of course. I'm using third-party software. I'm using Tax Help software. It works fabulously. I can usually access it before I hang up the phone. You guys have Canopy? Is Canopy doing this?
I'm not using that part of Canopy. They do have it where you can pull the transcripts that way, but I don't use that portion of it, so I don't know how quickly it is.
Okay.
But with the SOR mailbox, sometimes I think it varies, but sometimes I'm getting in there as quick as 5-10 minutes. And sometimes, I don't look until the next day and they're there, but I've never had an issue with them not getting in there.
Yeah, mine are almost, my experience has been that they are almost always there.
And my experience is the opposite. The one time I called for a client that I needed it, the client hired me, they levy on their pay, they need all these returns done. I asked for the transcripts to be sent to the box, and while I was on the phone, I said, I got a second client, I might as well have the same thing done. The client I needed, their stuff was never there. The person that I didn't need, I got it in about an hour. So I again, just as usual, when it comes to the CAF unit and transcripts and such, I'm a little bit cursed, and I had to call back to get the first client finally get their stuff out the door. So I will be the contrary experience. I wish that I'm the only person suffering this way from transcripts and the CAF unit and PPL. But yes, I definitely, if there are attendees out there asking or understanding that, oh geez, I didn't have it in 5 minutes, you got me to also be also feel your pain.
Poor Mark Contrarian. So I encountered the other day, I don't pay attention to these things. The other day I encountered a new collection form, 433H. I figured that was for household payroll liabilities. No, right?
Yeah, H. There you go. Here's
Amanda,
my H.
what's the H?
So the H is going to be used for wage earners that can't pay in the 72 months and they owe over the 50,000. So it's almost like a combination of the 433F and the 433D because you put your routing and account information right on there for the direct debit.
So a non-streamlined case, and I can do a direct debit built in. Why? Remind me, because again, I'm not that bright. Why do I care about doing direct debit on these cases?
Well, it lowers your user fee pretty drastically. I think it's, what is it, $43 now, Mark, on the user fee on that?
I think the 43, 107. 107. It's right here.
57?
If you go onto the, I think if you do it online, it's like 31 or 40. Yeah, 31. Yeah. And
but of course,
107
some of
here.
Do online.
But actually, it's less than half of the cost. You're right, Amanda. And direct debit, and this is a number, again, back from the 90s. I don't know if it's true today, but the IRS threw at us years and years ago, before you were even born, Amanda.
I was born in the 90s.
Okay.
I was born before then.
Oh, okay. That the IRS was experiencing an installment agreement default rate of 80% for non-direct debit payment plans. So the IRS the initiative for direct debit, like when we talk about our clients and different stuff, when you get clients on a frequency, you get paid more often. The IRS found that out years ago.
On a direct debit though, if I'm over 50,000, they typically will file a what?
Not file a lien.
If you're over 50, they will.
You're over. Okay.
Over 50 they will.
Yeah.
But what happens if I do a direct debit?
No lien.
What?
No lien then. Wait.
After 3 months, right?
If it's not filed,
Oh.
they won't file one. If it's filed, it's there until you hit that under 25 and meet all the criteria for the release.
And then you have to do the 3 months, and then
Right. Well, that's what I'm getting at. Is after 3 months of successful direct debit.
Not under 50. You have to be under 25 for that.
Yeah, you have to be under 25. See, your question screwed me up because I was like, wait, what is he talking about? What does he want me to answer? And that's not what I think he wants me to answer.
You're not very good at this, are you? All right.
I used to be. Now you added this third person to our little love affair here, and it's totally screwed me up.
All right, so we have the new
Or your questions are getting harder.
So I want to add, before we move on to the Taxpayer First Act, I do want to talk about one of the things. Go ahead, Mark. What were you gonna say?
Okay, so on the 433H, I do advise the listeners out there who are going to do representation to read the instructions of the 433H. They're very descriptive and organized, so that a taxpayer could actually read this and come away with what to do in certain situations. It's not a typical IRS instructions which just talk about that form. They do talk about alternatives. They do talk about what to do in alternative situations. So I recommend for us practitioners to read the full I know it's like 8 pages or something.
5 pages of instructions for 3-page form.
Right. It is 8 pages. So, but it is, you could be using this in a manner to help your practice.
Cool. So I would like to talk about for a minute one change that I keep forgetting. So in Drake, I do powers of attorney one of 2 places, either in Drake, if they're already a tax client because it's quicker, or in Tax Help software if they're not already a tax client, simply because I have to enter all the data in there anyway, and it'll just quickly populate, and it populates a lot more stuff. So if I haven't changed my EA number in Drake, so I'm back in the old days like Mark. I have a 5-digit EA number. Today the EA numbers are like 130,000. Mine is 60,000. So they keep telling me, by the way, we're going to start rejecting powers of attorney if you don't put in your whole number. I said, this is my whole number. They mean the preceding zeros. So I'm 60363. I should have 000-60363. So that being said, Bill Nemeth is a great friend to all of us and to NAEA, and he did a fabulous instruction set for doing a 2848 for all the little things we miss. And Mark happened to have a copy of it, and we have permission to distribute it, so it's in the handouts. Did you want to talk about anything, Mark? Well,
you said it's in the handout, but when I'm looking at the screen, it says 433H twice, and then the Taxpayer Act of 19. So
maybe I spoofed you.
But I would like to talk about it in that it's a great piece of information. I have Bill's written permission, and obviously you're giving him kudos. Bill has given me 2 actually I just opened it up and it opened up in front of my screen. Bill has given me 2 such templates. The first of all being a template for reading when I give a class, IRS correspondence action and reaction, and an important part of it is how to read the very bottom strand of a typical IRS letter. And Bill, while he was listening to my class, took it upon himself to provide me with a template to better organize my thoughts on how to read that at the bottom of it. And I actually had an IRS person that was kind of a good boost for me, because I said I still haven't found somebody who knows these 2 numbers that are in between certain numbers at the bottom of a neither Bill nor I knew what they were. And the guy from the Taxpayer Advocate Office said, I don't know what it is either. I'm going to try to go find out what those 2 numbers are at the bottom of each one of these letters. But the moral of the story is, do I have anything to say on the sample forms? As soon as John gets it up there, sample forms, I can reattach it to your thing, John, if you want.
You know what's funny? I thought I had it in the email from you, and I don't see it in the email. I'm looking at the email right now. So yeah, email it over to me when
I
maybe
did it
on the
just now.
following.
I did it just now to the to our message chat thing.
Oh,
I can email
okay.
it to you too. So on that is a let me just type here, Johnny boy. All right, I've emailed it and Facebooked it message to.
As I closed my email and went into Facebook, this is so professional, Mark. Thank you.
My wife says you have to get rid of Facebook in order to be more productive at your desk. I said, without Facebook, I wouldn't get any referrals.
Something like
So
that.
the fourth, that particular document that John will upload from Bill just basically talks about a common sense, simple explanation of how to make sure that your 8821s and 2848s get accepted. That's basically what it is. I give it as part of my, you know, I do a verbal, I do as part of my Rep 101 and IRS correspondence lectures. I will also explain these forms to the taxpayer, and NTPI 1, they asked us to do this as well.
Hey,
So,
Mark, I'm going to back us up while John's pulling that up. I was looking through the questions, and we have a comment in here about using the redacted transcripts to e-file because of the insufficient info. Can you expand on that a little for them?
say that again, because I'm
So we were talking earlier about getting the redacted transcripts, and the only
okay.
way to get the unredacted ones is through your services. And somebody made a comment that you can't use the redacted ones to e-file, which is correct because you don't have all of the information. So I just wanted to kind of circle back to that they're going to have to get the unredacted ones if they're wanting to e-file the return.
So the answer is we can't e-file. What that whole subject, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that whole subject comes down to, do we have a correct EIN number for each entity, whether it's a W-2 or a 1099? That's what it comes down to. So what what Tax Help with the Roger Nemeth's software that provides is a way to pull from a large database of EIN numbers and sort of redacted transcripts. And the benefit of that software is huge because you could take, first of all, what Roger's software did was pull unredacted transcripts from previous periods if you had a client. Now, obviously, it's a little different. I've been a user of his since the beginning, so I have the benefit. His software can go and pull from if the person worked for General Motors in 2015 and 16, Roger's software will pull that and apply it to the 2018 transcripts and in essence unredact them. So a benefit of some of these software programs is much like on your software when you're preparing a tax return and you start typing in an EIN number and it finishes the rest of the number and fills in Ford or General Motors or whatever. If you got a bunch of teachers in X, you know, Miami-Dade school district, it starts filling that in. Roger's software will do that. So that's a benefit of that software. Additionally, we are going to have to try to pull on our own resources to get those returns done. Yes, absolutely.
Well, to expand on that, if you have your 2848 on file, you can just use these services, and what you can pull from there is already unredacted.
Correct. And on top of all this, you have to be, I talked about this before the broadcast, and that is yet another pitch that if you're going to be a representative, if you're going to be doing representation cases or non-filers, whether it's whatever how deep you want to get into being in representation, you got to be on e-services. You got to be there. Whether it's just simply twice a year getting unredacted transcripts to your SOR, or whether or not you simply need to get transcripts all the time, I can't imagine being a representative and not having access to e-services.
Yeah. Well, and somebody made a comment that some people are still having trouble getting into it because of not having a cell phone in their own name and such. So when I set up my e-services account, my cell phone was not under my name, but I simply called my cell phone provider and told them I needed the caller ID on my number to show up under my name, and it fixed it. I was able to get in the next week.
Yeah. So I mean, those, yes. Was the IRS's method of absolutely demanding that you have a cell phone in your name? I mean, something as simple as corporations paying cell phones. I was actually quite happily surprised that everything went through on mine without any problems. I did have to call because it was October of last year where we all had to, it's almost like they pulled the plug on everything and said, start over. You're gonna have to go back in and verify all your information. And I did say a small Verizon prayer that my phone did pass muster for the IRS, and it happened, so I was happy. And that part of it, that administration and the minutia of having to get, you know, because to my knowledge, and maybe I'm completely wrong, because you do so many of these things with banks and different things where they're like, all right, you had a payment of $410. Was it on a 1902 Honda Accord or a whatever? And I'm, you know, you're just throwing spears in the night, because how do you figure out what cars you have and what mortgages you have and what, well, at least from my
Was Honda
standpoint.
around in 1902?
Actually,
Hey, I need to pull up a polling question as you guys
back then
talk
it was
about
called
Honda.
Datsun, but yes.
Okay. All right. While they're going through that polling question, somebody made a comment here. How do you get the POA to the IRS if you're on e-services to request transcripts? So you actually have to fax the power of attorney to the CAF departments. You can't do that through e-services any longer.
Correct. And the IRS has told us that their intention is to bring the disclosure, the e-filed disclosure authorization form back. As long as our CPA brethren don't violate their clients' rights by unethically saying that they do have a signed disclosure authorization when they actually don't, so it gets pulled away from us, because that's what happened the last time. They pulled, they pulled 200 CPAs, and they said it was CPAs. I'm not making this up.
No,
That it
dude,
wasn't
they
needed.
did. They pulled. TIGTA did an audit. They looked at 500.
Right, just like I said, 200.
Anyway, the audit is out there, and what happened is like in the movie Casino, it's the last time anybody gave anything valuable to guys like us, because we really screwed that one up. Nobody could produce, less than half even responded, and the bulk of them didn't have the documents or got the documents signed after the fact. And
Didn't know they were supposed to have the document signed in order to, under, you know, whatever penalties of perjury. Yes, I declare that this client is my client, and he signed the, you know, just ignoring those type of things to go ahead and they yanked it from us. So the IRS has indicated that it is their intention to move forward and bring back the disclosure, the electronic disclosure authorization, which would be awesome.
I still need about 16 of you to please answer the poll so I can close it and move on. So 10 more seconds, all right?
So next question I'm seeing here is, how are each of us handling the issue of state and local withholding, which isn't on the federal transcripts? So I know here in Colorado, I can call the Colorado Department of Revenue, and as long as I have the federal wage and income records and can tell them the employer's name as well as the wage amount, they will give me the state withholding figures.
And New York for a while was very easy. Then we went back to very hard, where you have to mail in like a DNA sample. You actually have to have your firstborn deliver it to the state tax and finance division in order to get your withholding. It used to be a lot easier, but again, thanks to identity theft, they have closed the door on that stuff. Now, it could have been last month. I just haven't tried to get, I don't think I've tried in 2019 to get New York State withholding from the state.
You used to be able to call, but that went away, Mark, you said?
Yeah, but it could be back. So what I'm saying is my information for New York is 7 months old. They could have changed things back, but last time I was looking into it, that you have to mail in a letter with proof of who you are, et cetera, et cetera. It was a horrible process, completely opposite. It used to be you called, they would fax you over all the years. So listen, I want 09 through 2015, they would fax it over to you. Now, understanding that on the New York site today, I got a copy on the same inquiry. I got a copy of a client's 2000, an actual copy of the taxpayer's 2008 and 2009 filed New York State return. So again, when we're looking at what can we get and what are the limitations, we can't get state withholding from the federal income information, from the W-2s and et cetera, and 1099-Rs. We can't get more, and I actually talked about this on John's webinar last summer. I was able to get a return transcript. Now, just to remember, you've got account transcripts. Those are the debits and credits in a client's account for that particular period, say the 2015 1040, and that exists for the entire life of that liability, plus in general a period of 6 years after, before it goes to a retention register. So those account transcripts are the basic. When you say to the IRS, I want transcripts, they're going to assume account transcripts. You've got the income transcripts, which is the W-2s, 1099s, which are not images of those documents, but the data entry from those documents, which, as Amanda pointed out and the attendee have pointed out, do not include state information, which I think is sort of crazy, considering that up till now, the IRS allowed state tax deductions. I mean, obviously they still allow them, but the first 10,000 combined. Why, if you simply have to add one data field, state withholding, on your income transcript, for something just to second guess what a taxpayer has had as their state withholding on that tax year, why wouldn't you just add it? Data is so cheap nowadays. Obviously, someone at the IRS felt that that their space was precious, and they weren't going to add that field because it was, for some reason, something they didn't need. Then you have what?
No, finish your thought, dude.
And then you have return transcripts, which we can get for the last 3 years. I say, in theory, I got last summer on a client on IRS e-services 6 years. I'll admit I did not use Rogers software to do that. I went directly onto my e-services account and I just kept clicking boxes. Allow me to get this, that, and they gave it to me. So I did. So the answer is, if you really need a 4-year back of a return transcript, either call practitioner party line and ask, what's the worst that happens? They say, no, we only have the last 3 years. Or log on to your e-services account like I did, and I got 6 years back. Also, like I said, you might go to your state website and see if they have a copy of at least the state return. They're obviously not going to have a copy of the 1040, but they might have a copy that could help you greatly in the preparation of past non-filed returns. I'll get off my soapbox.
So a couple other quick questions there that are quick answers. Somebody asked how many digits your EA number has to be. So that has to be 8 digits. So that's whatever zeros you have to add in front of that to get to the 8. And then somebody posted a question about getting information on a deceased taxpayer when you have the surviving spouse power of attorney. So to do that, you have to use the Form 56, that's the fiduciary form, and you have to accompany that with the power of attorney for the deceased taxpayer, signed by the surviving spouse or whoever had power of attorney.
Now, so I see that John has posted the sample Nemeth bill sample 2848 and 8821, just for all those listeners who are also.
Yeah, there's a couple of comments though, Mark, that they can't download it, that it's not working. So I will email that out at the conclusion. There's over 300 people on the webinar, but at the conclusion today, I will email you a link that works. So you should be able to get that. So, try it again. If at the end of the thing it doesn't download, we'll send it to you again. Oh, John moved to your right. Thank you. I feel like I'm at a Frank Agostino. I feel like I'm at a Frank Agostino event where, anyone else, they have signs that say 5 minutes and 10 minutes left. At a Frank Agostino event, it says move left, move right, look at the microphone. So
the Form 56 will work for any deceased taxpayer. If it's a child of someone, they just have to have the court-appointed power of attorney to fill out that Form 56. But you can use that to get information on deceased taxpayers as long as you have somebody that can legally sign that for them, and you can provide that. And some are saying the link works, and some are saying that it doesn't.
So John, I didn't bother putting the, John move to the left up there, because you can, at least I can see myself. You don't look at yourself while you're.
Take a good look at me. Would you look at me if you had the choice? All right. No, because
John, you're lovely to
I'm all right. So for the folks at home, I'm doing all the administrative things while they talk. So of course I'm not paying attention strictly to the microphone. So to the
video camera.
So, Mark,
all right.
we brought this up earlier, but I want to touch more on the identity theft, because in the Taxpayer First Act, there's some stuff in there about having a dedicated representative at the IRS for victims of ID theft to get the case pushed through. And I think personally, having dealt with several of those, that is just amazing. And I'm super excited about that, because I hate calling and having to go through everything with someone new every time. And they ask the same questions and it's the same information. And you spend, instead of an hour on the phone the first time, an hour and a half the second time, and 2 hours the third time. So I think it's awesome that you're going to have a dedicated representative in the ID theft unit that will actually walk your client's case through from the point that they're notified there's identity theft until they clear it up.
And I could not agree. You know, Amanda, I could not agree strongly enough with you. In the Taxpayer First Act download, which hopefully works, those are pages. I don't know. I'm going to open it up right now so I can tell how many pages. I actually don't know how many pages, because apparently I didn't keep it as a PDF on my desktop. I'm looking at page 64, and that is not 64 of the PDF. It's page 64 of the Act, where at the bottom of it, it says single point of contact for tax-related identity theft victims. And I know we're not supposed to do this when we do continuing education, but I'm going to read from the Act. This is what it is. I'm going to paraphrase here. Secretary of Treasury shall establish and implement procedures to ensure that any taxpayer whose return has been delayed or otherwise adversely affected due to tax-related identity theft has a single point of contact at the IRS throughout the processing of the taxpayer's case. Single point of contact shall track the taxpayer's case to completion and coordinate, and this is the important part as it goes on, coordinate with other IRS employees to resolve the case issues as quickly as possible. I think this might be some function of taxpayer advocate, because that's what this smells like in a very positive way. Single point of contact, the purposes of subject, a single point of contact shall consist of a team or subset of specially trained employees who have the ability to work across functions to resolve issues in the taxpayer's case and be accountable for handling the case until resolution. That is a taxpayer advocate.
I agree that I don't know where they're going to find the personnel for this, but the biggest takeaway here is the assignment of a person, and that they're going to stay with the case till the end, and or have to turn over the case if they retire, go out on disability, or whatever. So I think these are strong things. And if you go one step beyond that, Mark, it talks about a notification requirement now. So if they suspect you are a victim of ID theft in the past, they haven't notified you. Now they're going to notify you that you or your dependents may be subject or are under investigation for ID theft. So I think that that's also pretty important.
Now, this is the first podcast webinar I've done with John since December, since our audited podcast.
That's right, our audited podcast. Thank you very much.
Which we passed with flying colors. And now we can say we passed muster. Not just passed.
So for those of you who think there are standards in continuing education, there are. You can actually get your CE provider and your class audited, which we did anyway.
Well, what I was trying to say is I figured out how to move over the questions from teeny tiny little questions in my margin to in front of my screen. So I can now actually see these questions and comments myself, which sort of distracts sometimes as you're trying to get something done here. But we're gonna then kind of circle back to the taxpayer first, unless Amanda, do you have any more comments on the?
No, I think we've hit all of them. I've been answering some of them directly back to them if they're a very specific one. There is one on here that they're having problems with e-services knowing their CAF number, so you probably just need to call e-services and work through that with them.
My personal experience with e-services as a like in October when we had to re-up and I did have to call, nothing but positive. I have had positive customer service, so that's what it is, as a practitioner from the e-services help desk since its inception over 3 years ago. It's probably more like 15, but anyways, that with being able to sort out problems, and that is really, you're looking at that specific unit. You wouldn't call taxpayer advocate, you wouldn't call practitioner hotline, you would call the e-services help desk directly for those kind of problems, whoever that attendee was with that question.
So circling back for a minute, Mark, identity theft protection in the past, the IP PIN has been limited to either victims of ID theft or to those who live in certain states, Georgia, Florida, where there's a high incidence of ID theft. But now they're going to roll it out over 5 years. And what are we going to have?
I don't know the answer to your question, John.
And anybody's going to be able to get an IP PIN.
Okay.
Right? They can roll it out over 5 years. So now what's interesting here from a practice management standpoint, we can talk about that for just a second. I think everybody agrees an IP PIN is absolutely the way to go. The question becomes, do you want to take the time 1 year, once your state is available, and enroll everybody in it, and add yet one more thing they need to bring in that they're going to forget to bring in, or have a crisis that you don't have it? It's the good and the bad, right? It's the brave new world of taxation.
So I have several clients that have identity theft pins, and I have probably about 15 of them. And out of those 15, I have 2 that every year they didn't get the letter, they don't have a clue what it is, and then for them to call and try and get that over the phone with the IRS is like the biggest headache in the world for them, because I can't do that for them. They have to do that. And so those 2, we always just end up paper filing.
Just to clear up one thing, Amanda and Mark, speaking myself in the third person, are not employees of John. We are associates, friends of John.
What? Who would
Well, we're not. Somebody asked about employees. Is Amanda the employee?
Somebody asked if I was your employee from Denver. They had attended the class I did with you in Orlando a few years ago.
We are independent contractors. We get 1099s.
I think we all have separate tax practices. Mark and
I'm just wearing the shirt. I'm wearing the shirt for for I don't know.
It was laundry day, so Mark wore the shirt.
I got them special. I got 2 shirts, and then I keep one here in a desk drawer, usually for these occasions. I actually yesterday randomly pulled this shirt out and said, "Oh, I guess I will put that up in pole position to wear tomorrow. I guess I actually need it." My wife was a little bit, "What are you wearing?" Okay.
Your wife asked me for a shirt. What, are you kidding?
Julia, never mind.
Anyway, so that's just an interesting thing, what we're going to end up doing with IB PIN. Typically, I have people that have one and forgot to tell me. So after the return rejects, I'm like, you got something to tell me? Also, we had an interesting one. Are you seeing a large increase in people who are getting called in for ID verification? Right, where they have to go down to the Taxpayer Assistance Center with all their ID?
Are you asking me?
Had that happen?
I've not. I've had it happen. We had it happen where someone went into a nursing home. So all of a sudden, the subsequent year, we did the tax return with the parents' address on it, the kid's address on it, across the country. So there were a whole lot of flags that maybe looked like ID theft. She had taken money out of the retirement accounts. We made estimated payments. We had one just the other day, kid's 19 years old, filing his first tax return. He had to go to the TAC with all of his ID to get his $100 refund released. Outrageous, but
I haven't had that happen, but I think a couple of years ago I had a client of mine whose 7-year-old kid got rejected because the 7-year-old had filed a tax return.
Wow.
Hey, those are the future EAs of America. Initiative. They showed initiative.
One thing I want to add too, Taxpayer First Act gives us what kind of signatures finally?
Electronic.
Signatures. Yeah, so all of you folks at home who have been using Right Signature and other products to get 2848 signed, you can't do that. I've had this discussion the last 3 years at the NAEA fly-in as you're explaining this to congressional staffers who look at you like you have 2 heads when you say, we can't do this. because they just recently bought a home, refinanced a home, and they're like, I signed 80 times with Adobe and it was legally acceptable. I said, yes, except for the power of attorney with the IRS. But now we have that, and the IRS has been given 6 months from enactment to choose a product and get it up and running. So by tax season, we should have a workable e-signature product for powers of attorney.
Right, and so what the act said was, I think it's 6 months. It's giving the IRS 6 months to come up with a plan of how to use it. It's not like some of these things are, hey, the date of enactment or 45 days or the next 433H that's signed after today's day of enactment. What the act says is the IRS, Congress is giving IRS authorization to come up with a method of doing it, and on the 2848s. So, you know, I signed up somebody recently from Portugal, who just happened, a New Yorker who was temporarily residing in Portugal. So that would have worked for her, where she could have used the systems on her end to get the power of attorney signed. It would have worked out for me a little faster. It was pretty fast as it was, but that would work out. So obviously, e-signatures on 2848s are something that I absolutely endorse and love, and so we can't. So somebody had said, POA rejected because of e-signature. Now, we got back in the early 2000s, let's say 2000, not early, but 2007, 2008, we did get our practice, Tax Help Associates, got slapped on the hand by CAF unit. They just started rejecting any power of attorney that came from us because, in fact, we were using signature stamps. So they said you have to have, as a POA, you have to have original signatures on at the bottom of your 2848s. And again, this was back 2007, 2007, 8, 9, where in general, I signed all my powers of attorney, but my partner at the time was having the staff use a signature stamp, and we got slapped for it. And just, when I say slapped, it wasn't like a sanction or anything like that. They just said, we won't process a power of attorney that we think looks like it has a signature stamp or an e-signature. So again, you're talking to somebody who is CAF unit cursed, and give the CAF unit an excuse that they think my client's signature looks like it's an e-signature, it looks like it's a signature stamp, my POA is going to get rejected.
Well, I've had that too. Let me launch the poll here.
I've never had it rejected because they've said it's e-signature, and I've never had an issue with CAF, but when I call in and have to fax it in over the phone, more often than not, I have them ask me if that's my legal signature because I sign like a doctor. And I've actually had people tell me they won't talk to me because they can't read my signature legibly.
That's ridiculous.
We've had non-resident returns get mailed back because the signature looks like it's a printed, like they signed it and printed it and we printed it out, as opposed to being the original ink signature on a mailed in return, which is kind of crazy to me. There's about 30 of you that need to vote. You're logged in, but you haven't voted.
Yeah, I mean, that's because Amanda, so my signature is an M with a squiggly, and I've never had anyone say boo to me, not a banker. It's funny when people are signing the e-file authorizations in front of you and they go, is it include my middle initial? I can't see that. Is that up there? And I go, ma'am, it could be an X. All you have to do is prove that that was your signature. Because a judge, I did a judge's tax return this tax season, and he was signing and he said a signature is presumed authentic until proven otherwise. So that was his, as he was signing, that was his, and he was a state judge, for clarification.
I need 12 of you to sign, 12 of you to answer, please.
Lily on here said that she's been using e-signatures and they've all been accepted. And her question is, what happens if I've been using e-signatures and it's been accepted by PPS and CAF?
Well, stop doing it today, right? Because and I would move. I would stop doing it today, And I don't know, as you see these people maybe get an ink one to replace it.
I mean, if part of her question is anyone going back, and is anyone at the IRS going back and looking at these signatures again? In no way, shape, or form. I don't know the statistic, but I imagine a basic CAF unit person, as fast as you can look at a 2848 on your screen and type it into a database, that's how many they do in a day. And there are thousands and thousands of 2848s and 8821s processed in a single day. No one's going back. I'm not justifying using e-signatures, but no one's going back and look at those. I like John's suggestion. Obviously, you want to stop doing that now because it's not legal. Was that the word? And from now on, certainly have people sign their returns and not use e-signatures.
Hey, Mark, Evan Goar is on and asks a good question. Why do the IP pins change each year? Well, the answer, Evan, and everybody, is that that's the whole point, right? Is that we now have a number that a piece of identity that changes each year, and that's designed to protect you. And I was at the New Jersey Enrolled Agents Society dinner Wednesday, and they had someone from the IRS on ID theft, and I didn't know this one, that the IP pin is good only for the calendar year, and it's for any return you file during that calendar year. So if I need to file my 17, 18, and 19 returns during 2020, I need to use the 2020 IP pin, not the IP pin for each year, which makes sense.
That's actually very interesting. I did not know that, Johnny. And
I did not either.
And that actually answers the question, because I think I was doing exactly that, filing a non-filer who had an identity theft thing. That answers a question. Thank you, John, for that piece of information.
Thank you, John, for that completely useless.
Not useless at all, even valid for continuing education. So moving into Taxpayer First Act of 2019. Of 1919. I'm dating myself by saying that.
I definitely wasn't alive then, Mark.
So creating, and I was listening to a gentleman at Supers while I was instructing there, and I was listening to Mark Sade. I think that's how you say his name. He's a very, very good speaker at an EA. And he had indicated, he went over briefly the Taxpayer First Act because it hadn't been signed yet when he was speaking a couple weeks ago in Reno. And he indicated that obviously we have appeals, right? He had indicated in his lecture that there is no statutory authority for the Office of Appeals. Now, I was unaware of this. I didn't research it. Someone in the audience questioned him, but it was the questions from the audience, from that particular attendee, seemed to be it was just weird the way the person was saying, like, well, how do we have appeals if it's not there's plenty of things that happen every day that in the IRS that we don't have, but they exist. So this part of the First Act has to do with establishing an independent, very, very independent Office of Appeals. And that's their specific wording, to establish the IRS independent Office of Appeals. So Congress is making it official, I guess, and accentuating independence of appeals, where appeals can talk directly to district counsel without the IRS intervening to get a district counsel opinion. District counsel is also supposed to be independent. Talk to them directly. So that's that part of it. And I apologize for turning pages, but they're going to elect an official to be known as the Chief of Appeals, which I'm pretty sure already exists. So that was part of what the attendee was saying. We already have a Chief of Appeals, but here's this act saying we will make a position called the Chief of Appeals. And it's kind of vague as to what this person should do, but the purpose is to resolve federal tax controversies without litigation on a basis which is fair and impartial, which is exactly what appeals has been doing for many, many eons, or at least several years, whichever's less. Anything on that, Amanda?
No, I think you hit on it. There's a couple questions there on that. Someone's asking, are they placing appeals on a similar footing to taxpayer advocate service? That's what it sounds like. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I don't. So what the question is, it sounds like it's on the same footing of the taxpayer advocate. I can't disagree with you, Henry, but maybe I do. I know kind of think I know where Henry's going with that. The question placer and a highly respected, intelligent guy in our industry, my old friend, who I will be seeing in a couple weeks at the Crystal Chandelier. I won't disagree with you. How about that? I started to, but I won't disagree with you. I like how, on what Henry's saying, I like how taxpayer advocate and appeals and that the identity theft unit people are able to contact independently and talk to and coordinate and make things happen to be resolved. That is absolutely up. I agree with you there, Henry. Yes, I probably won't be having anything to drink at that Crystal Chandelier, but I will be on that third stool on the left, Henry. All right. So,
do we want to touch on, because I know there's probably some people that have to get off right at the end of the hour. Can we touch on the contact for third parties and the summons through the new act?
I had put, now in that, again, the scribble that the attendees see in the upload, which is the PDF that says the act, I had made those notes and I didn't really intend for humans to see them. There might be misspellings and different things. But those are my own personal
Is it even
stuff.
legible to anybody besides you, Mark?
Yeah, they were for my own personal thing. Now here's another poll question.
I got to ask for people, Amanda's right, for anybody that needs to get off at the 50 minutes, answer the third question. And then if you've been here 50 minutes, you've answered your, you've earned your 1 CE. But otherwise, I think these two are going to keep on going. So while we're here, let's keep going.
So I'm turning pages here to giving more teeth to the taxpayer advocate. That's what I said. Again, these are my rumblings, my grumblings of what I see in these acts and my highlighting. I don't know if the highlighting came through on the PDF. Sometimes my scanner likes to scan in color and sometimes it doesn't, and it doesn't like to save in color. So I liked the chief of information, and I honestly don't know if any of the attendees do know this question, is the IRS says, the act says, in general, there shall be in the Internal Revenue Service an Internal Revenue Service chief of information officer, thereafter referred to as the IRS CIO, who shall be appointed by the commissioner. It sounds like it's a new position. I imagine there's somebody who probably already sits in that chair with a different nameplate. Oh, good. The highlighting is showing up. Good. So you guys can really see what a crazy highlighter I am. And I'm looking for the parts of the acts that the act that the questionnaire was asking for.
So it's section 1204.
So that's more in the beginning. We do have to say,
the way it reads is the secretary shall not issue any summons described in the preceding sentence unless the information sought, well, hold on, let me back up because I think it's before that I'm looking at.
And I had to get in the one thing, I had to de novo, the legal term, I had to remind everybody what that means, beginning anew. Relative to innocent spouse and clarification on equitable relief. And so I'm trying to find that section here. I should probably bring it up on the thing But I mean,
I'm
as far
just
as
looking at it online, and
Third-party
it's,
summons?
what was that?
You're talking about third-party summons?
what,
Third-party summons and contact of third parties.
so the
So
contact of third
basically, the way that
parties,
reading is that the IRS may not contact any person other than the taxpayer with respect to the determination or collection of the liability unless such contact occurs during a period not greater than 1 year, which is specified in a notice. So the way I'm understanding this, and correct me if you're interpreting it incorrectly, but the IRS now has to send out a notice to taxpayers, which they've been supposed to do, but I don't ever get them,
bingo.
that they are going to be contacting third parties. It has to be provided at least 45 days before they begin the process, and then that contact's only valid for a year, or they have to send out a new notice.
This is about the John Doe summonses, which is what they're trying to alleviate a bit. And we just saw, the last one we saw is with Coinbase, which is going to be very interesting with these crypto cases, where they found 15,000 people that IRS is alleging only 900 people filed returns and reporting crypto income in, I think, 2015. Yet they've got just one marketplace, Coinbase, had between 13 and 15,000 people that should have filed a return, should have reported crypto income. So John Doe summonses are a great tool, but I think the belief, as we, again, taxpayer first, is that maybe these tools are being used a bit too much for an overreach.
When I read this, the thing that struck me most is, and this happened, what I feel a couple times in this act, was Congress saying things that already existed, and I'm not just talking about appeals, I'm actually not referring to appeals, but things that the IRS should have been doing that they really need to do, like listening to taxpayer advocate. That was in the IRS Reform and Restructuring Act. The third-party contact letter, for those of us who've been doing representation for a long time, was the IRS had a devil of a time over a period of 2 years trying to come up with the correct wording on the third-party notice letter. And they came out with, I don't know, four versions of that letter in a period of time. I don't know if it was 2012, 13, 14, wherever it was. Maybe it was earlier than that. Maybe it was 7, 8, 9, where they were just trying to come up with the proper wording, and they finally got a letter. They used it for about 3 or 4 years. I have not seen a third-party contact letter for all the clients I have, all these representation clients that I have. I don't think I've seen a third-party contact letter in 5 years. I
don't think I think I saw a couple when I first started in the industry, which has been about 15, 16 years ago, and I don't think I've seen one since.
Right. So these third-party contact letters exist in a revenue officer's inventory. Yes, they're basically for when the taxpayer, and I mentioned this yesterday when we were talking about this, the third-party contact letter, sometimes as powers of attorney, we don't see it because it's not necessary. The revenue officer has us as a contact, has contacted us. They don't need to find a taxpayer because they're non-responsive, which is, in my little world, and John's got a bigger scope picture of it when he's talking about the John Doe summonses than I do, but the micro world that I live in, where revenue officers can't find a taxpayer, they've got me. So they don't need to go knocking on the neighbors' doors on either side to say, hey, the Johnsons were in this house the last time they filed the return. Do you know where Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, did they move to Iowa? What'd they do?
Well, and I think it's interesting. We've got Billy made a comment here, and he said he's a former revenue officer. He goes, they're supposed to be sent out, but they rarely are. So this is somebody that's worked for the IRS and is saying, yeah, they're not used the way they were intended to be.
And you know, hey, I've got if you've attended some of my classes, I've got an ongoing beef with the IRS's issuing of a final notice, intent to levy and your rights to a hearing, a 1058 letter issued by revenue officers, because in the subcommittees and in the IRS Reform and Restructuring Act of '98, they indicated that before a 1058 is issued, the revenue officer is supposed to make contact with the taxpayer, make a determination that they're not going to cooperate, and have a group manager signature in the file indicating go ahead and issue a 1058. In practice today, revenue officers, as soon as they pick up a case, they go, oh, Okay, final notice was issued by ACS on 13/14/15. The guy still owes 16/17. I'm going to immediately file a lien. I'm going to immediately file a 1058, wait 45 days so that then I can levy if the guy didn't respond, and then work the case. So I'm very comfortable with my relationship with all the revenue officers here in Buffalo. There's not many, and they're actually dropping off like flies through attrition, retiring, different things. But I had a revenue officer last year who issued a 1058. I immediately filed a CDP, and he called me and said, "What do you do?" I mean, and this told me, "What are you doing, Mark? Why are you filing an appeal?" I said, "I don't know, Billy. Why did you file a 1058 without calling me?" And I went into my whole dissertation, and he was on a let's agree to disagree. I'm like, wait, where's that agree to disagree? You never even called
I'm
me.
curious to know if anybody besides me does this. Do you ever, so sometimes when I get those from revenue officers, I fax the CDP over to them, but I put on a cover sheet, I'm faxing this to preserve my right that it's filed timely, but I would love to resolve this case directly with you.
Right.
Yep. Hey, Mark, just on a side note, and Amanda, you'll appreciate this. So on one of Mark's driving tours of Buffalo, he took me by an old shopping center, which happens to have the IRS Buffalo collection unit housed in it. So he's telling me this whole story. So I don't know, a month or two later, I'm on the phone with somebody who's at the Buffalo post of duty, and we're chatting. And I said, "Oh, are you in the old shopping center?" And he says, "Yeah, how would you know that?" I said, "Oh, buddy of mine's an enrolled agent there, Marc Dombrowski." And before I could say I was in town visiting, he says, "Oh, Mark, he's a great guy." Now, when's the last time you hear that from, you're just in bed with these guys, Mark? I don't know.
They better at ACS in Apple Tree Mall. Yeah, that's I could say to somebody, when you and your coworkers go out for a smoke, you're looking at a building across the parking lot where I used to serve ice cream when I was 16 out of Dubell's Bell's supermarket. And where the IRS is right now, ACS is something called Big N. I don't know, again, any reference unless you're in the Northeast, or even if that how big the Big N was, but it was like a big box store back in the 60s and 70s, which that mall died.
I want to plug along on a couple of things, just maybe some important things. Notice that the IRS is directed now to come up with a filing platform for 1099s, like Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you're just like the Social Security site for filing W-2s. You'll be able to go online to an IRS site and file a 1099. I don't see any fraud there. Do you? Oh, I don't like this guy, and I know his Social Security number. Let's go file a 1099 for him.
But you're not supposed to do that, John.
I know.
No.
But currently, there's a limit. You have to issue 250 documents a year, returns, right? And you count W-2s and quarterly reports to get to that 250. That number is going to drop to 10 over the next 3 years. So basically, anybody who's an employer, no more paper anything, right? You figure 4 941s and 940, there's 5 right there. Your own tax return is 6. So plug in a couple of W-2s, you're going to get to 10, and you're going to need to file everything electronically, including the 1099s and the W-2s.
Which is so much more convenient anyways. Paper stinks. I mean, we were talking about this just before.
You heard that, John.
You all see his file cabinets in the background right there.
I was giving him a heck before the webinar for not being paperless yet.
Yeah, I'm a horrible, even though I'm a tree hugger, I kill so many trees in the daily work of my practice.
I've had one case of paper for 2 years.
Oh gosh.
That's because she makes all her clients download stuff and print it themselves. But
I don't think we've touched on the increased failure to file penalty to Vinnie.
I was getting there, but go ahead.
So I'm getting back to it here, but I believe it was going up to, was it $330? Is that what we saw in there, Mark?
$330 for a late filed 1040 for tax years, for a return required to be filed after December 31st, 2019. So that's this year's returns.
So even more reason to talk to our clients and tell them, like, even if we've got all these ones prior, let's get this year's done on time so that we don't have that penalty hitting this year as well.
Yeah, and if you owe $80,000, who cares if it's $330?
Well,
it wouldn't be. It'd be 20. It'd be the 4.5%.
Right. debit and credit cards, the IRS is now authorized, provided the taxpayer pays the credit card discount fee, the IRS is now authorized to directly take payments for credit cards.
As opposed to enriching some third-party member, like,
As
you know,
opposed to a third-party service, yeah. So that's going to be
whoever got that contract, cha-ching.
Well, the IRS is directed to seek to minimize these fees when entering into contracts to process credit and debit cards. So you're probably going to see a 1% discount rate or something, you know, because the end user is going to be paying it, not the government.
And the bank, I mean, still, whatever bank is behind that still gets the money. Like, again, whatever Chase
Correct.
or Citibank, whoever, Bank of America, whoever has that sweetheart deal, just sits back. Even if they discount, even if they say the IRS, we normally charge 2.2%, we'll charge you 2.1%. The IRS says, yay, we're saving the taxpayers of America. That bank just, you know, might as well buy stock in that bank. This is not insider trading information. Caveat. So we are what? So we're past our 50 minutes, so now we can actually like talk like people.
Well, yes, 10% of your attendees have left. So I do want to mention, if you like NQ or you want to try NQ, you know, these summer 30-minute phone calls, 30 minutes a hold with the IRS, you can call them in 3 minutes. Mark, you're a user? No.
No, I'm not. I am so.
I hate it. I think it's the worst thing that they've done, and it just bogs down the phone lines ridiculously.
I agree that at some point it's partially causing the block, whatever they're doing, right? Because I called the other day and there's a 1 minute or 1 hour to get on. And sure enough, I called in queue 3 minutes and I was on. Yeah. So at some point.
What they're doing is they're just calling in hundreds of calls at a time. And then when somebody wants that call, they kick it over. But if not, as soon as somebody picks up, they're hanging up.
They're disconnecting, yeah. So it just makes you wonder how many thousand disconnects there are and how many of these guys are taking up spots. So I hate to say it, I bought the service and I dial the regular number first, but if I find the hold is going to be more than like 15 minutes, I use their service.
See, I just wish. I always thought you were part of the solution.
I did too.
Now he's
but
part
here's
of the
what's neat too. I don't have to play the fake phone number game anymore either. So like, you know, I have a West Coast phone number because the IRS system looks at the DID, you know, the caller ID for the outbound number. So if I have a California number, I can call Practitioner Priority Service till 10 at night, which can be pretty
all
handy.
You night owls, I have an East Coast number so that I can start at 5 a.m.
Right. You got one better, John.
No. Listen, you're not fighting with me on it. I think the ability to do it, depending on how your day goes, is super important, which is why I also think it's foolish that they don't keep it open and let all of us use all of these numbers whenever we want.
Well, people have to go home for the day. Some of us, some of them work W-2 and they go home, like Fred Flintstone, and the whistle blows at 5:01 and they go home. Not all of us. Like I got to ask Mark if I have to work, you know, if I can work overtime. I got to ask Mark if I have to stay here. Again, talking to myself in the third person. I just wish that it was. I wish that they had that. Is it called NQ? I wish they had it for my merchant's vendors account, which was a 2.5 hour wait yesterday for me to ask them why they're hitting my bank account for $112.45 a month when I canceled their service in December. So, you know, luckily I went right to the bank and said, stop these debits and let me pick up the pieces because these idiots won't even pick up the phone. And then while I was in the pool, they hung up on me. So that was the courtesy discount after 2 hours and 31 minutes. They hung up on me, just like the IRS. So vendors do it too.
You have a pool?
I have a big pool.
I've found with these
it's my insurance pool that I'm in. Anyways, go ahead.
I found with these hold times, I'm personally mailing a lot more stuff in than I ever have in the past because of the hold times. I'm getting the deadline. I'm 10 days before it. We're mailing stuff out. I'm following up the day of or the day after the deadline, depending on hold times, saying, hey, I mailed it, getting another 30 to 45 days on the account for receipt and processing.
I mean, we've been bundling stuff. So depending on what the client's needs are, you know, if it's either the last minute or they're urgent, they pay more. But otherwise, I say to them, listen, let me call on Fridays or when I get 5 cases. And that way it saves them a bit of money by calling and getting 5 cases. I know some of the call sites, I hear rumors, oh no, they'll only take 2 or they'll only take one case, which is nonsense. They're supposed to take 5. It's the IRM, they can take 5. So, you know, if you push a little bit, all of a sudden they take your 5 cases. So, and it was interesting too, at Agostino's event, if you don't get to Frank Agostino's barbecue and his international and domestic enforcement, you really should. This year, Commissioner Rettig showed up, which was kind of cool. And if you have the opportunity to hear him speak at any event this summer, he's everywhere, you should. And he's talking about double jacking, where he goes into these, like he's the supervisor. He goes in and sits there plugged in to different reps, what they're doing, what they're saying. And it's just amazing what he's hearing and what he's feeding back. One other interesting thing, you know, whenever there's a natural disaster, one of the if I haven't coordinated it, I haven't looked at it, but I'm going to this summer. Do you know that FEMA does not have their own call center?
I did not know that.
Is that
They
on
don't.
purpose?
That's correct, because they can flip a switch and IRS call centers become the FEMA call centers. They are cross-trained. So those are IRS
That's
employees.
why. So it's not just that natural disasters shut down certain offices. It's that the ones that are still open are doing double duty.
Call center employee, no, they're doing no duty. They're the FEMA call center and not our call center. So that'll be interesting this summer. The first time I see that FEMA's got the call centers open, I want to go and see if our hold times go up or not. And this is funny. So Rettig said that he didn't know this. He says, I'm the commissioner and I don't know this. And I forget how many million calls they had answered. And they said, well, FEMA doesn't, the folks that work at the IRS that are the career bureaucrats are telling him that, oh, FEMA doesn't like this to get out. And apparently Rettig's response was, well, I don't work for FEMA. And he started telling this story. And I feel like it's a little bit of a backdoor, by the way, this is why your service stinks. It's not our fault. And I noticed, Mark, that ever since I started speaking, the attendees are dropping off precipitously. So.
Well, they signed up for an hour, John. Let's say
I was
this
thinking it was
extra
me.
banter.
Yeah.
I think we covered everything that we set out to cover today.
I think we did.
Oh,
So-
I did want to mention the you can see this through the camera just as clearly as you can see it on the internet, which is a kind of neat little tool thing that's apparently it's been out, but it's the Taxpayer Advocate Taxpayer Roadmap of 2019. Now, Jerry Gaddis, EA, the president of the NAEA, made me aware of this Monday or Tuesday. He actually used Twitter in a manner to to send this to my phone. We're very proud of Jerry. He's technologically challenged. He's only had a smartphone for probably 5-6 months. He's one of my buddies, and we're very proud of him that he's able to. What's that?
And he's not on Facebook.
He's not on Facebook. Jerry Gaddis is one of my friends who has never seen snow. And every time he sees a snowstorm in Buffalo, he sends me a picture of the palm tree that he's standing next to or laying in a hammock attached to. But this taxpayer roadmap is available on the Taxpayer Advocate site. My problem with it, and I do have several friends in the Taxpayer Advocate in that little building at the Apple Tree Mall, formerly known as Como Mall, not to be confused with Cuomo. But anyways, I've asked them for
the New York governor, for those of you who don't know.
A readable version of this taxpayer roadmap. So the one that's on the website is color. It's very nice. I've brought it up on my screen large, and I still can't read. I can read about half of it. I've got good eyesight thanks to LASIK, but I will say that I am going to have to personally go down to the Taxpayer Advocate's office at the closest post of duty and get an actual color version of this that one can read, because these two versions I printed out were sent to me by practitioners who said, no, here's a readable version, and they weren't. They're still the small
Amber
version.
just commented that Cheryl says you can call and order one, and it's most likely bigger and more legible. But then she said she downloaded the big PDF and sent it to Kinko's to have it made into a big poster for her wall.
All right.
That's a brilliant idea.
No,
really
it's
is.
because it is cool. It's pretty neat. Fact is, they don't need me anymore. Once my clients see this, I have to hide it before the retainer check clears, then put it on the wall. Take it down.
Mark, if we're smart, we'll print those and remember the EA name tags that were a hit? I think we should print 100 of those and bring them. Those would be great door prizes too.
Keep doing the wrong side because I'm looking in a mirror, so you're doing the reverse side.
Oh, you're right. Oh, that's right. So before those of you that we're gonna go, I think. Thank you all for being here. If you didn't get any of the handouts, John at taxpracticepro.com. If you would like to speak to any of the speakers, they're really nice people and they will take your email or your call. Amanda at trueresolve.com.
TrueResolveTax.com.
TrueResolveTax.com. Mark at Marc Dombrowski EA at gmail.com. Yeah, I wonder if he ever gets any misdirected email.
Well, I wouldn't know because they don't spell it right, so I don't get it.
How about Tax Help EA? Anyway, thank you all. We're going to try. I don't know what combination of speakers we'll have. We're going to try and do this at least every other week this summer. Hopefully, I'm going to post that soon, but we all know I do things at the last minute. But I will tell you this. We put this together on a week's notice. We had 300 of you on here. If you would do me a favor, you will get a poll from us. But the real value is go to the Facebook or Google review and type something nice, and we really appreciate that. So thank you again, and everybody have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.